You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special V.A.C. Roundtable. As we go through the various discussions, we want to touch on various aspects of cannabis. And when I was I still am a cannabis activist, needless to say, and I was very fortunate to work with one of the wonderful ladies who we're going to be interviewing tonight. This one is very special to me because my baptism in hemp was an outright baptism by fire of literally jumping in and trying to figure it out, or as we described it, as building the airplane while flying it. Which was a reality that unfortunately a lot of us in the industry have realized that there's not a lot of infrastructure that we thought or that we think are the normalcy that fabrics belong to. Hemp has been a challenge and a unique challenge. So tonight we're welcoming Barbara Filippone and Summer Star Haeske from EnviroTextiles. And these are the top women in cannabis as far as I'm concerned, because they've been importing, exporting for decades, and their experience is pretty much unparalleled. So we wanted to have them in for a discussion to see where things are going, what's been happening, and then to see where things are going. So we're going to jump right into it. And the first question is going to go out to you both. And it's kind of a multi-level question. So how did you originally come to cannabis is a multi-tiered question, such as when did you first hear about cannabis? When did you first get turned on? And then when did you realize it was your life's work? So Barbara, going to start there.
Well, usually the first thing I say when I hear the word cannabis, are we talking about industrial hemp, or are we talking about cannabis that we can ingest?
Well, the initial question's about cannabis to ingest, and then you'll go into the other parts. So that's why I
Oh,
said it's a multi-part question. Says
cool.
because usually you aren't turned on to, hey, you want to check out this hemp fabric? You know what I'm saying? It's.
Right. I think I was the first one ever busted in ninth grade. New Jersey Task Force raid. Um, Luckily, I was tipped off and I was able to clean 5 55-gallon trash cans of ditchweed from Nebraska out of the house before they raided. That was, I don't know, 1970. I don't know. But it was the first time my father, after he saw the raid, said, "Now I know why you call them pigs."
Wow.
Because the cops weren't even waiting for us, because I cleaned it out. Get to the house, it was a commune, and I get to the house, my puppy's outside, nobody's there. Then everyone started coming home. The house was destroyed. I mean, axe the door open, couches cut open, and we're saying, what the hell happened here? And somebody looked up, and taped to the chandelier was a 5-page warrant that that all they found was 3 marijuana seeds, a pack of Bambi cigarette rolling papers, and a marijuana roach. Because I was on top of it. Somebody tipped me off. I even emptied the vacuum cleaner bag.
Wow, you were very forward thinking for your day.
Well, my first introduction to smoking weed was my sister telling me I had to smoke this so I wouldn't tell on her. I was 11 years old.
Oh my God, that's your aunt, Summer.
Yeah, too bad she's not that cool anymore.
All right, so Barb, so when did you realize that hemp fabric was going to be your future?
1989, I saw a roll that was about 12 inches wide, very stiff, and it was burial cloth from the Hmong tribe in Thailand. It was the very first hemp I saw, and thought, well, how can I design apparel with a 12-inch wide cloth? So it kind of went on the back burner for a little while. There were placemats. Couldn't use it for napkins, it was too rough. But it was the very first. And then it went on for decades between different continents, different qualities, which will get answered later on. And I'm curious what Summer says. She's my daughter.
I know, so that's why, I was wondering if y'all had this conversation prior. So, all right, Summer. So
She called you. She called Steve.
I called the office, yeah, but that was a different time. That was a different time. I just had a flashback of the first time I met ATN and he about fell over. But for me, it was definitely kind of always a staple in my life. I mean, my mother had been a designer. She kind of skipped that part with her introduction. She was already a very known fashion designer. And she was trying to stand up for human and worker rights and conditions in India and got kicked out of India. And so she was, back on the trade show scene saying, hey, I'm available on the market. She would get contracted by brands. And that's when she came across that 12-inch wide hemp and ended up doing the first high-end hemp fashion lines, Earth Tribe and Earth Goods. And that's what then was in the big magazines. And Steve D'Angelo saw her in those magazines and had hunted her to go off to Romania and rebuild the factories and do all this cool stuff. So for me, I was 10 years old in the first Senate hearings for cannabis after the Prohibition. And that was the Senator Casey bill back in 91, 92. So I was 9, 10 years old. At that time, I was growing up with my father in Denver because mom was off in Romania and all in DC and all over the place. And so I just happened to go to middle school 2 blocks from the Capitol in Denver. So during those hearings, I would go run into the bathroom in my middle school and put my hemp suit on and run down the street to meet up with mom. And at that time, there was Karen Byers that was involved in that as well. Mom and Karen were sharing an apartment in Capitol Hill when mom was around. And then Aguadas that does the hemp ice cream sandwiches is still around. And that's when Aguadas was inspired to create the hemp ice cream. He was actually hired there to film and document the hearing. And so here I was, this little kid, and I was getting so frustrated sitting in these hearings because everyone opposing the bill was there saying our youth is going to be too stoned to know their left hand from their right by the time it's their turn to run the country. And I'm over here going, we're not here to talk about, marijuana, cannabis. We're here to talk about industrial hemp. And as a 10-year-old, I knew more than, our state leaders. And it was so frustrating. I asked if I could speak in the Senate hearings. They said I was not 18 and that I could only speak to them behind closed doors. So I did. I made a point. I was a very adamant little kid, kind of playing cheerleader for my peers because I had learned so much and just couldn't understand how our nation ever went the direction it did with so many things. So, of course, I was very lucky to be surrounded by all these awesome and innovative, pioneers and freedom fighters and warriors for our causes. And so, of course, I was getting in trouble a lot because I was the kid in history class saying, when are we going to talk about the hemp part of things? Or always having to bring up, the hemp part of things. And then we had a hemp shop, when mom was developing these products, there weren't enough people buying them. And so we just happened to have a home base in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, which also happens to be where the largest hot springs pool in the world is. And we got this old hole in the wall location literally across the Colorado River from this big hot springs pool. And we'd stay open until 10 o'clock at night to capture all the tourists that would come for dinners and have to wait. And I really attribute that little hemp shop to be one of the catalysts that really spread our message worldwide because we had so many visitors come in, and we were kind of the home base for a lot of our, people in the US too, as they were going across I-70. And we had that hemp shop from 1991 to 2000. And when we closed the hemp shop in 2000, I was 18. I had a little apartment across the street in the alley, and the few products that were left in the hemp shop I brought over to my apartment, and I was raided the next day. And they tried to charge me with over 300 counts of paraphernalia. When it was like, packs of rolling papers and rolling trays that had never even been used and saw the price tag on it. So I called Donnie Warshafter, and at that time was with Normal. And I said, oh my God, you have to help me, and we can't let mom find out. and and she didn't find out until a few years ago. Actually, it was kind of funny. We slipped all hanging out one night, but
Yeah, but you got busted before that and called Steve.
Oh yeah, that was in high school. I was going to East High School, and it was like a snowy day. I hated school. I thought it was a waste of time. I knew everything they were teaching me and didn't think I could learn anything else, although I was always very good at math and science. So I'd go to those classes, and then I learned that I could go to lunch detention and do all the rest of the work. And I'd go behind this old theater where they had a little dugout, and we could get away from the weather and smoke with my friends. And I got popped, and they brought me to school in cuffs because we had a police station in the school. And mom was in Romania. I knew my father was going to kill me. So I called the office. I didn't know she had left already. And I was trying to get mom. And I called the office, and I'm pretty sure it was Steve that answered the phone. I don't know if it was, I don't think it was you, ATN. I think it was Steve. And he totally was not following what was going on. I'm like, I just got in trouble. I don't know what to do. I need mom. And he goes, oh, she's already on the plane to Romania. And I was going, oh no, I'm dead. I'm dead. And he goes, wait, what happened? And I said, I'm standing here. I'm like, don't know what to do. And I hear him cover the phone and say, hey, everybody, summer just got popped. Light a joint. And I was like, oh no. He goes, the first kid just got popped. And so that wasn't very helpful, but it definitely, it all goes hand in hand. I mean, we were able to use our amazing hemp products to open the eyes and minds of so many people to all that cannabis can offer on every level. People that were never open to medical or recreational, we're able to finally see it in a whole new light. And so I really utilized that. And ATN was like the first real sales rep to bring hemp products out to the markets and to new customers.
Number one
Yeah,
sales rep.
yeah, number one. And then I was kind of the next in line. So when I was 16, I had a fake ID so that I could go to trade shows and take my clients out to dinner and get into certain convention halls. You had to be 18. So I had a fake ID from a girl that said I was 21. I was 16 and I was hitting trade shows in Las Vegas, New York, San Francisco, San Diego. And, back then, a lot of people were just mocking and full of controversy and all the propaganda. And I remember my first big trade show by myself in Las Vegas. I had been mocked at and, yelled at by everyone I had approached that whole morning. I was in the bathroom crying, trying to pull myself together. And I had this mantra come to me that was like, okay, take a deep breath and embrace the ignorance. And that has stayed with me my entire career and passion, because you have to accept that, like, people just don't know. They just don't know. And to find a way to get into their hearts and minds and get them to open up and even listen. What the topics we're talking about are topics that anyone who actually stops and listens for a moment will be captivated by it and will want to know more and will want to dig further or somehow implement or play their part and join this mission with all of us. So
Well, there's the reason that you ladies are the catalysts and the drivers, because yeah, you're both trailblazers. You have really taken, I mean, most kids I know are trying to sneak into bars and have fake IDs for that. They aren't trying to get into trade shows to sell hemp. I mean, sorry, Summers, sorry, that's badass. As far as I'm concerned, that's some serious notch on the respect chart there, because people don't realize, yeah, we were taking this to a new market that no one really understood what hemp was. And it took, everybody was educating, and it took a few years before we could even get somebody like the Jabbit Show to even give us an aisle, right? And then that immediately evaporated pretty quickly too, so I mean, it showed us how quickly and how fleeting hemp was, but it never stopped us from realizing its potential. And that's where I have respect for y'all, because you carried that potential forward. I went in a different direction, but y'all, we're going to get into. So next up will be Council Member Wade Laughter. Council Member, you're up.
Thank you, Etienne. I will note that I was struck by the idea that two hemp activists would tell such great stories about being busted by the cops. I think all of us cannabis people can totally relate to your experience. Anyway, Barbara, how did your early experiences in Indian textile mills shape your commitment to sustainable manufacturing in the hemp textile industry? And how has that influenced your work up to today? And thank you, Barbara, for joining us this evening.
Thank you. There's actually a book. It's called One Green Deed Spawns Another, written by David Mahood. And there's 12 environmentalists that were interviewed about why we do what we do. In my chapter, I could never show my parents because it talks about, it paraphrased me in the interview, and he wrote it that way. And I never let my parents see it because of how it was written. But India, I was designing hippie clothing out of cotton. All the, the multi-prints, the halter tops. We had the hottest clothing line. I've been in airports and seen my garments where you have 200 pieces in a clothing line. India, I thought I was working with natural fiber textiles because that's been drilled into my head since a small child. My mother would not let us wear anything that was synthetic, nothing in the house. We weren't allowed to have Coca-Cola on my birthday once. I was allowed. But India, I thought I was working with natural fibers. And the way India works, you have your different stations you work in. To give a couple examples that scarred me from my entire career, even to this day, as I speak about it, I see the images. Fabric being dyed outside in concrete, like pools with men standing in there with a wooden stick and these toxic dyes. I would walk through the cut and sew factories, and the women would always be working in the office, and with the designers, the men were sewers. And if the company I worked for employed 28,000 people. And he was, when there's someone of that stature, they have a G at the end of their name when they're greeted. And I was walking with him, and he always carried this stick with a brass ball on the end of it. I never knew what it was, and he would tap his hand. He hit a man in the back of his head onto the sewing machine and told him to work faster. Well, people obviously around me didn't have enough food. Everyone was so thin. And they put designers in five-star hotels and treat you like royalty, and you get anything you want. Well, all I wanted to do was hang out with the bellboys and, the waiters, because they could speak English. And at nights, I would hear screaming like it was people, but it was actually wild boars fighting for the trash from the hotels, with the people, the untouchables, trying to get food from the trash from the hotels. So since I was able to get whatever I wanted, I would order everything on the menu and drop it off the balcony of my hotel. Because no one will ever suffer if I can do something to help them. So I learned about the caste system, that there's only rich and the very poor, which is still to this day. And the younger generation, maybe, in India will change, this new generation. But from what I can tell, there's still a superiority issue with the poor and the rich, the untouchables. Um, I'm supposed to be doing what I do, not only to make better textiles, but to be an example of be kind, be respectful. If someone's in need, maybe I don't give them money, but I carry wool sweaters in the back of my car. And when there's someone homeless, they get a sweater. So it's kind of funny in my town here because all the homeless people are wearing sweaters. But it influenced my work to scrutinize every detail of what goes into fabric and garments. I ended up getting, uh, I got kicked out of India because I was at dinner one night and they made me wear a sequence gown, but I was wearing Birkenstocks with my sequin gown. And at dinner that night, they said, well, what do you think of our country? Heads of state, people that were, logistics companies and, government people. And I asked them, do you know what a trash can is? Because they don't have trash cans. Everything goes on the ground for the untouchables, the lower class, to sieve through whatever trash is thrown on the ground. Um, I asked them if they knew what a barnyard was, because all animals are considered reincarnated family members. So the sanitation, the conditions, no matter where you are you can't describe them. You can't possibly describe cows and pigs and dogs. If they want to go in someone's tent that lives on a hillside, they get to go in the tent and shit all over the place. And you can't shoo them away.
Yeah,
because
and
that's grim.
Mom, you also would always complain about like you know, these facilities, these people weren't getting breaks. They weren't standing up and stretching every couple hours. There was no windows to bring any light or air in. And she would implement this with even domestic facilities. Like when I was a kid and we were in Denver, there was a couple facilities that we went to, and she would say to me, "This is as bad as India." And, and I'd go, "Really? Right in Denver?" And she goes, "I've seen some of the worst right in our own backyard in LA and Denver." And she goes, "Are we going to turn our back and leave these people with nothing, or are we going to go in there and try to make a difference?" And she'd say, "You guys can get our contract, but only if you do this and this and this and this and this. And by the end of the month, when I come back, if I see that you have chairs and you guys have opened up the windows and the people are taking breaks, then I'm going to give you a chance and I'm going to give you a contract. And if you don't, then you don't get it." And I think it was everywhere in the US but once. And we went back a month later and they were gone. The place had just like disappeared. But everywhere else, they actually really appreciated her giving them the opportunity and also helping to better their way of life there.
They were sweatshops.
Yeah.
with a lot of Vietnamese people. It was mostly Vietnamese
Yeah.
in the United States.
Okay.
So it's kind of funny, not funny, but ironic that we scrutinize the world when we're as bad, if not worse, in our own country. And this is right here in Denver on Federal Boulevard, Los Angeles. And I'm sure they're still there, and sooner or later, I'll probably be utilizing. But this is, what we wear. I think of what's the objective and then working backwards in that objective so that every single part is healthy spiritually, physically, for who's ever wearing it.
Mm-hmm.
Because look at, we spend 99.9% of our time in a garment. Pajamas, suit jackets. I wanted to change things. And it's because of my dear mother. My mother was the one that was like this. She taught me from the age of 3. I lost her last week, a couple days ago.
Our dearest condolences.
Thank you. But she's with Dad and my brother now. They were all buried in a compost cemetery. They took my brother's ashes, my father's, and my mother's. She didn't want to be cremated, so she wanted to be buried in a compost. So that tells you what she was always, from as long as I remember. So when, sometimes when I hear the word organic, there was no word organic when I was 3, 4 years old. These were things that were just part of the family, what we did. It's
Yeah, that's a responsibility, and you taught us. I mean, remember the Adidas hemp shoe when we finally got the recycled sole? You went and found, I do believe, a factory in Thailand that was responsible to actually then do the shoe because we had to do it right. And so I've never forgotten that, and I've respected you greatly because you led by example and taught us to lead by example, to not just think about hemp, but think about how what our hemp is produced and who is producing it and how they're producing it. And that really set home to me because it was the message of hemp. It was all about compassion and doing things right from the beginning, and hemp is part of that. So I cannot thank you enough for your continued leadership there. So Mary Lynn is up with our next question. So Council Member Mathry.
Okay, well, yeah, I am so glad to hear from both of you. Very cool, as Etienne has already told us previously that we'll really enjoy you. Summer, how did your early involvement in launching EnviroTextiles shape your career, and what key challenges did you overcome in making hemp textiles more accessible?
Well, that's a good one because Etienne actually touched on, as he was kind of exiting, was when we were starting to really get some momentum, but it was like this, go stop scenario where the first multi-million-dollar order for hemp came in, and there wasn't enough hemp in all of Europe that could have filled that order in 5-10 years maybe. That's actually come back up recently, Etienne. That the part of the order that was filled, there's a part of it still sitting in a warehouse in the U.S., and we are now offering it as our novelty collection.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
It's totally nuts, right? So we'll have to talk about that. But such special fabrics. But for me, when we started EnviroTextiles, Mom had left Ecolution and had been approached by 2 other women to form a company Our name Earth Goods went through many different phases in the early hemp days. So originally it was the first high-end women's line that Mom designed. Then it was the name of our hemp shop. Earth Goods was our little hemp shop here in Glenwood. Then here come these two partners with Mom, and they say, we want to actually, invest in you and offer these fabrics. And so it was like the first fabric focused company. Earth Goods was the fabrics, American Hemp was the twine, yarn, and cordage. And, while Mom was off at this point, when she got that big order, she went, oh my God, we're never going to be able to fill this. We're never going to be able to really, truly mainstream. Like, what are we going to do? And that's when she started researching and found that China had been growing hemp for 8,000 years and they had state-of-the-art natural fiber facilities. And she thought they're going to have everything we need. And she goes there, and that was all true, but they had only ever developed like 1 or 2 fabrics for their military use. And that was it. So they had been growing and using it traditionally as a companion plant for their crops, lining their shoes with it for the antibacterial properties, eating it, making, homemade lotions, things like that. And she got there and she's like, oh shit, like yes, they have everything we need, but no, it hasn't been done. And, if these guys are willing to sign up and hold off and let me take the time to develop here, we can fill this order eventually. And so she is very famous in China for revolutionizing their ancient fiber into all these amazing fabrics we have today. And while she was in China and I was doing the trade shows, the two partners back here were spending a ton of money and not investing it where Mom felt it was needed. And it took her over a year of compiling different, violations on the contract before she could finally walk away clean. And so and obviously I was in the know behind the scenes of, uh-oh, Mom's gonna, this is the trip that she's gonna go and quit and throw this pile of violations in their faces. And she came home and I had to really, and she goes, when I come home, we've got a week to like get things together and send you off to the Magic Apparel show and to now represent our new company. And we're going to do this together. And at first I was like, bam, like hit in the face, because it wasn't this like excitement. We really had to I was 18. I had just been raided for closing our hemp shop, and I had to really ask myself, like, oh my God, am I really going to do this? And am I going to, fight for the right, like I've watched my mother do for, a majority of my life at that point. And I saw all the trials and tribulations and controversy and the hearings and every level and every which way we turned. That I really had to go, am I really going to do this? And I thought, you know what? It's a fight worth fighting for. And I'm going to put a 10-year plan in place. I'll be young enough that I can still go and do something else and have a career if this isn't the direction that I need to go in to take care of my family. And within the first year, I knew I made the right decision and that I wasn't going anywhere. I already had a love and a passion for what we were doing and representing. And, I learned because of all the people that I come into contact with that my true talent is inspiring people. So yes, I'm educating them on, what we're here and talking about and the importance of it. But I have a better gift at inspiring them to take that knowledge and go and do something with it and to not let it stop at our table and what we're talking about today. And so I kind of became like the hype person, I was like the hype gal that was like, no, take this and go, we got your back. And if you ever, and I still to this day tell clients, there's a lot of young designers or startups or small family businesses that they put their heart and soul into their creations, and they'll give it everything they got. And it's difficult when you're, you know, a one-man show and you can't do it all, and you're creating everything and trying to go to market and financing it and, you know, trying to find your place. And so people can get really discouraged and burnt out. I mean, so many people in the hemp and the cannabis space, you know, we've all seen all these people that are like, man, I've given it all I got, whether that was 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. We go in and out of this, like, am I really doing what I should be doing? Or like, you know, should I be doing something else, but have this in the background instead of this being the forefront? And so I often remind people, I say, if you ever feel that way, you're ever feeling alone or down, you know, I mean, I can't tell you how many clients, I mean, we have over 14,000 active accounts around the world these days. We just had to upgrade our internal corporate system because we ran out of space for our client base. And so a lot of these creators are like off grid in the woods, like really living the life and walking the walk. And I go, you guys especially are going to feel that sometimes. I say, if you ever do, just call me. You know, call me, and remember that we all have each other, and we're this green army, and we have spread our wings around this planet so many times that there's somebody close, and even when we're not close, we're still all connected.
But make sure you say, when we talk about 14,000 people, these are people that buy maybe 5 yards.
It's all, yeah, I mean, it's
and they grow with us.
It's all levels, you know, with us. I mean, obviously we're wholesale only, but like, you know, they have to start somewhere. So sometimes you'll have a huge brand that only needs 5 or 10 yards to do their samples and then take it to show, and they write a ton of orders, and then they come back and need a large production amount. Sometimes we have, like we have really high-end designers, Versace, for example. You know, I got in the doors with so many of the world's high-end designers with our hemp silk. Our hemp silk, 70% hemp, it's 30% silk. And, you know, it's, I don't know if the lighting's good enough in here, but that's 70% hemp, you guys. And it looks and feels just like silk, but it's even stronger and more durable, and it's going to last, and it's washable. And, you know, we got in the doors with companies and brands like that, but Versace, it's like, even though it's Versace, they only go through like 100 yards a year because they're only selling, you know, 10 of these high-end $10,000 to $30,000 gowns a year for the red carpet, or for you know, their music video, somebody that got it for a music video or something. So it's interesting that sometimes the smallest order could lead to the largest impact out in the mainstream market.
Yeah.
And balancing that, yeah, I mean, it's its own set of challenges, and y'all have negotiated that very well. Next up will be Councilmember Tony Landry. Councilmember Landry.
Hey, Barbara and Summers, an honor to be here listening to your story. It's such an interesting story, and thank you for being forerunners in the hemp fabric industry. I think it's very important. My question is to you, Barbara. What role did you play in standardizing hemp textile production in Romania and China, and how have your quality control systems influenced the industry today?
Well, if you were in on the beginning, you would see burlap sack type material. Romania, how did I influence it? All the way down to the field, where, you know, Etienne, you'll remember we used to have in the retting process. By the time I would get the fiber to be spun into a yarn or woven into a cloth, there'd always be black lines. So I had to figure out where this black was coming from. And it's actually due to the retting process that they're still trying to do today in America. I should have been on the Roundtable for America because I'm seeing the repeat of things that were mold developing. That specific mold is Aspergillus niger. It's deadly if you're breathing it. I don't want to get off topic because I really want to be able to discuss what I see today. And we're going down the wrong road again. Again, it's the third resurgence, but to standardize in Romania. When I went there, we didn't even have light bulbs. It was a couple years after the assassination of Ceausescu. There was very little equipment for cutting and sewing if we made the fabric. There was a few looms. There was about an 8-head spinning line. There wasn't the infrastructure to fulfill what we needed for Ecolution, let alone Ralph Lauren, and let alone Rug Barn, who was the second $1 million order. So first thing was I got together with, we had a Romanian partner, Ecolution did, and with Steve and Eric, and said, we need equipment. We even need light bulbs because there wasn't light bulbs. There was 3 foods that you could eat. There wasn't even food. There was sauerkraut bread and pork chops. There was no hot water. You were lucky if you got hot water or water every other day. But the standardizing of hemp, first of all, nobody planted hemp. It was broadcasted. America, you see all these machines planting. And other countries, Romania, Hungary, Poland, South Korea, Canada, was always broadcast. There was 2 types of retting. There was water retting in a pond, in a cinder block pond, or it was called dew retting, where you'd lay it in the field. So the dew retting is what was causing the molding. So we in Romania said, we're going to do it in water, the water retting. And when it dried, it was dried in the TP stands of stock. You would still get a little bit of mold development. The spinning systems in Romania and Hungary, they were accustomed to making twine and cordage, which was a dry spinning system. We needed a wet spinning system, and we could only make one size yarn. There was only 6, 8 spinning heads where there was water dripping over it in order to get that wet spun. But I'm skipping a step. There are
Mom, tell them like how, with fabric creation, because a lot of people don't understand all that stuff. There's a warp yarn that runs on your looms, and then your weft comes through. And one of the ways she manipulated the production, so instead of having one warp and one weft, she'd have a common warp, and she'd switch out the weft, so we didn't have to run a machine with all one fabric. All of a sudden she'd switch out the weft, and it would look like a totally different fabric, but it was still that same common warp. And so we went from having 6 fabrics to 18 overnight, in the same loom, because she goes, look, we can do this and make more, out of our time in motion and production and all the work it took for the workers and things like that. And then, in China, they wanted to name all the first fabrics after her, and they couldn't say the name Barbara. So they said Bawa. So it was Bawa 1, Bawa 2, Bawa 3. And she comes home, she goes, I can't get them to understand that they can't name these fabrics Bawa. And I said, sure as they can, let them, And I wish she would have let them, because it's just as part of our history. But she implemented, the item system of how things read. And when you look at our item codes, it starts with a B, which stands for before dyed and is our natural colored fabrics, or it starts with a D that stands for dyed with the code that comes. So there's a system in place that people, once they know and understand, they really can kind of look through, a list and be able to kind of know what they're looking at.
Well, the problem, there's so many steps that have not been identified verbally in America. And the infrastructure that's required to make some, I might as well, I'll wait to get to current day, because my job has always been protect the owners and the investors. That is the most important thing. Do not let anyone put a penny into any hemp project without a full evaluation. And that includes logistics. What's the roads like? What's our power systems? How much water allotment is allowed? What are before anybody puts a penny anywhere, these are things that are really critical. And when people say, I'm going to grow hemp, I'm going to process it, I'm going to make yarn, I'm going to make clothing, that is not humanly possible. And I don't want to use anyone's names in America, but trust me, the hound dog is on it over here. Because it's not possible. The infrastructure needed to do this is at least 5 factories and 2 purification systems for effluent waters. That's about a $300 million investment if you want to make T-shirts and clothing. If you want to use the method Romania did, it's more mechanical.
Right.
It's yes, but in America, I mean, we're probably going to go off this line of questions. I'm actually going to skip to question 5.
Mom.
Because, no, we're on question 4.
Okay.
So this blends into 5, where it says, the blends of fabric. All right, a hemp stalk, the stalk, if it's planted correctly, and if it's done according to a method that I'd love to show everyone. I've been at so many events in America, and we can do this. But everyone was too into being Louis Pasteur when I was trying to get the focus on hemp. We knew, ATN, that what GW went through. We knew you had 28 years of clinical trials. You can't make a medical claim without satisfying the white man in the blue suit that you got to get through all the hoops when it's utterly absurd. It could have been, and it did turn into, I guess, a nutraceutical. I don't know anything about the medical side of it, really. I know it works topically for me. And I dosed my dad before he died while he was in hospice. I was sneaking it. So I'd love to talk about the medical side and my perception of it, but I need to explain, are there people watching this that we can't see?
Yes, this is live on Facebook, so it's out live to the world right now.
Oh, good. I hope there's a lot of you, because the stalk in America, I'm hearing the term, I'm growing for fiber. I'm growing for fiber. They're including the herd with the fiber. The fiber, we always gave it historically a percentage of 15% of the outer part of the stalk. 15%. Now, whether you're processing it mechanically or whether you're degumming it, you are only going to get 9%. You're lucky if you get 9% usable fiber. Out of that 9%, maybe 4% can be used in 100% hemp yarns, because the staple length and the spinning systems we don't have in America. The shorter staple lengths from after it's degummed or mechanically combed, those short fibers are ideal to blend with other plant fibers, or silk, which comes from a silkworm. We are never going to have enough bass fiber in America to make the products that we've heard people proclaim they were going to do. But what is likely to happen is the herd will end up being processed into lyocell. And at that point, we'll be lucky if any plant matter is detected. Now, lyocell was what I used in the blend of the hemp cell. In 2002, actually, it was in the year 2000, I came up with this idea to blend it with lyocell, because lyocell was made from eucalyptus and beech trees. So it was progress. It's not perfection, but we needed something other than cotton to blend with the short staple length hemp. So in America, we better be careful, because if you look at what's happened, we've seen the PLA fabrics derived from corn, which I could write a book about that, and who I've approached and threatened about that. The PET plastic, those are not getting the attention that plant fibers are right now. But we can't have it be the corn, not only because most of it is, high pesticide use or Roundup Ready seed, or there's so many issues. I could talk hours about that, but it's highly flammable. And if you look at Google search EnviroTextiles flammable fabrics, you'll clearly see what I'm talking about, the corn cellulose blended with polyester. Now, you don't want to be wearing that. Our epidermis is the largest cell of our body. It's you got to take care of that because your pores are like if somebody takes a pill through their mouth, our pores are taking in what we are clothing ourselves with. And the two most prevalent cancers are prostate cancer and breast cancer. And I get really in deep to this stuff. So right now, gentlemen, if you have elastic at your boxers or briefs, roll the synthetic side away from your waist. Wear them because a man produces the most heat at his waist. A woman, it's under your breasts. And what are we surrounding our breasts with? Synthetic materials. You know, we're getting many more breast lumps. Some are benign, some aren't. I could write an encyclopedia on this subject, and I'm not talking out my dupa. I've paid out of pocket for tests to prove what I'm talking about. Hence, if anyone's sacrificed, I think I'm the only person with a 10,000 square foot building with a multi-million-dollar mortgage that lives in a camper. Okay, I will do whatever it takes. And here I am in America begging for people to listen to at least a plan. The investment groups, either they're going to be passionate and want something great, or they're con artists, penny stock pump and dumps. It's one or the other. And if they're passionate, they need to hear me and get on a path that we can reach an objective, because we absolutely can. California had these fires. Okay, if there's a God, he's telling us we need a different building material. Period.
Definitely.
And we can do this, but without standards in the herd. And I'm not saying standards. You're not going to be able to pass the ASTM tests, structural tests. You're not going to be able to meet code. The herd has to be standard. And it's quite easy to do it. And I'd like to put on a conference and do this for the 150,000th time and show and tell, because there's only one company I've seen apply this method. And I can't disclose it because I just got tricked into signing an NDA. But if it was yesterday, I would have blown the whistle on that one.
Wow. Well, let's
Okay.
that is what it
All
is.
right, Summer's telling me I'm going off.
Coming over here with her.
And
All right.
I have to stop. Okay.
So I'm gonna let you said that you did not want to answer question 5, but we do have questions. So Leslie's gonna
I did
ask it,
want.
and Summer's gonna answer her part of it.
Okay.
Thanks, Etienne. I have to say that you both are so inspiring to me. I grew up in a textile family, but you know, they sold synthetic naugahyde. And I was one of those people that had my hemp Adidas shoes a handful of years before I even tried marijuana. So it's great to be here with you guys today. So both of you have been innovators in hemp fabric development. How did the creation of blends like hemp silk, hemp cotton, and your trademark blend hemp cell contribute to the mainstream acceptance of hemp textiles as both sustainable and commercially viable?
Well, honestly, once the blends started coming, it opened the doors tremendously. And one of the big reasons, of course, was kind of keeping the cost down. 100% hemp was about double the price point of blends. But then we also had a lot of developments where when Barb was talking about, being more limited in Romania compared to in China, we started doing knits. So with fabrics, there's knits like t-shirt materials, fleeces for hoodies, towels. Those are your knits versus your wovens that are like your linens and your canvases and muslin weights. And we started doing jersey knits for t-shirts, and there was no elasticity to the shirt, so a t-shirt would turn into a dress on somebody throughout the day just because it was stretching out and stretching out. And we don't need the technical terms though for everybody. It's called elongating, but it would just stretch out, and of course you'd watch it and it would go back to shape. But that was no way to get new designers and brands to be adding it to their line, let alone getting the masses to go, I love this hemp t-shirt. And so when mom started doing the jersey knit, she started with 100% hemp, finding that was not going to work for knits, and started doing the development phase where the sweet spot was this 55% hemp, 45% organic cotton. And that was what really allowed those fabrics to shine and keep their shape and be soft and comfortable and affordable. Over the years, because more because of our blends,
Not exactly.
we have.
It was also due to duties.
Well, okay, and the duties, but that was also part of the cost factor, when you're then importing your developments. And, over the last 25 years, we've outbeat the price of linens. We've outbeat the price of silks. We've outbeat the price of upholstery weights. And we are right there with high-end conventional commercial goods. So we really had two main goals. One was, how do we make sure we have a fabric for everyone? And how do we make sure that everyone that gets their hands on it is going to absolutely fall in love with our products and want to come back for more? So that really helped push the envelope with opening the doors and in so many ways. And those t-shirts, back in 99, we had so many clients say, can you guys just make a basic t-shirt? Like, it's so hard to actually produce apparel and finished products. And they were like, can you guys just do a basic t-shirt so we can then focus on the shorts and the pants and everything else? And we did a basic t-shirt by 2000 and natural and black. And by the next year we had 8 colors. We were doing tote bags. So we still offer today a promo collection that's super simple for people to put their logo on, workwear, concert tours, clothing brands. And it's still expanding hemp the same way it was 25 years ago.
You can go higher than a percent hemp, but then cost effective. People are accustomed to paying a couple dollars for a t-shirt, cotton, but a hemp t-shirt at 55 hemp, we have people that are still wearing them 30 years later.
Yeah.
And that's why, natural fabrics matter. That's what people don't realize is there's a longevity that comes. Even though it does cost, it's going to last. That's the thing. But they don't understand that. And that was also a hard thing to convey to people. For those who don't realize, I'm actually wearing a hemp blend. This is all 100% hemp that Barbara worked on back in Hungary and Romania. That I sold back in the 90s, and some of her original innovations, and not just weaving, but colors and then blends, and then doing these types of weaves, which were early, but these helped afford us other lines, which I have the black and white one in the other room as well.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net. Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. Rerolled Saturdays. Check it out. Nothing but non-stop cannabis and psychedelic programming. Find it at 420pace.ca.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Are you looking to get your medical cannabis grow license? Limestone City Hydroponics can help patients through the process of obtaining their license to grow medical cannabis. What's that? You don't have a doctor. If you meet the medical criteria, Limestone City Hydroponics has a nurse practitioner who can assess and provide medical cannabis prescriptions. What are you waiting for? Contact Limestone City Hydroponics at limestonecityhydroponics.ca or call them at 613-548-0420.
PACE Radio is the People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
But let's get to our next question. Next up will be Michael Crowitz, council member.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, y'all, for joining us tonight. This has been really interesting, and we've got some really interesting questions yet to come. Before I get in this question, I just find it interesting that people may buy a hemp product and not know it, or they may buy a hemp product and buy it specifically because it's made of hemp. And I was, trying to figure out one day, like, where is the line of a cannabis hemp consumer? Like, what is a cannabis hemp consumer? And we tell me what you think, but we felt like that was somebody who actually intentionally bought the product because it had hemp, even if it might be a truck. And this question is for Summer. Your role in Ford Eco Innovation Award-winning F-350 design helped showcase hemp's potential beyond textiles. How did this project influence the use of hemp in the automotive industry?
It's been pretty cool. We did MTV's Pimp My Ride, and that aired in 123 countries. That is what triggered Ford to call me and say, hey, we saw what you guys could do as the interiors. We are trying to innovate vehicles. So the Ford was actually a hydro Ford. So there was 2 huge hydro tanks in the back of that thing, which ends up in the end, being super dangerous. Like, it wasn't going to go further from SEMA concept awards, but it was really a cool thing to be able to show off. But it definitely triggered a big interest in being able to bring it into interiors. One of Mom's early accounts that she had handed over to me, and that we still supply, is Volkswagen's Westphalia pop-up campers that use our canvas. And then we just recently had Ziggy Marley pull out Bob's original car. I think it was a Firebird, or I'd have to look. We haven't posted it quite yet. But he pulled out Bob Marley's first nice car he had bought himself. It was been in storage all these decades, and restore it. And they did the interior with our 100% hemp canvas. And he was like so stoked that, he goes, man, I made this car cooler than my dad ever even could have imagined it was going to be, all these years later, pulling it out of storage. So, nowadays, what's really actually pushing the limits to all that is we're going into composite class. So we're replacing fiberglass with our hemp. And so instead of just doing the interior and upholstery with our fabrics, we're now doing hard goods. And I actually brought over, this is a hemp prosthetic leg. Okay. And this company is doing two versions. This is their hard version, so I can't really like squeeze it, where this is their soft version where you've got some give. And what's so cool about a lot of these programs is that, these products are turning out to be stronger, lighter weight, and much more cost effective than these really high price point, nasty fiberglass. But what was interesting with these guys is they said, it's not like we were calling you guys because we wanted to make a hemp prosthetic. We just realized that we had to change what we're using because our guys in the shops that are grinding away on these products are getting cancer and they're dying, man. They're 26 years old, riddled with cancer, because there's no way to even, have a hazmat or a suit that's going to block all these nasty particles. And so to think about revolutionizing an entire, huge marketplace to a healthy environment for these guys, on top of getting rid of the material impact, is so huge. So like nowadays we have clients that are doing hockey helmets, entire drum sets, tons of surfboards, skateboards, snowboards, skis. We're going into some new areas right now that are really exciting. And I think it's going to make a huge, huge impact on a lot of some of the most nasty products that are produced on our planet. So.
Well, I know that Ben Dronkers has been using his hemp as a sound dampener as well as insulation in cars. So is that starting to catch on with some of your product in some of the American car manufacturers?
Yeah, I mean, there's, it's definitely more novelty right now. I think the largest, no, but for like our interiors, the largest contract I've seen so far come through for actual like hemp upholstery for cars. They did a very novelty limited edition run of 5,000 cars. So, when you think about the market, percentage of that, we're not even coming close to like a 0.01% of a market yet. But I think that, we're just starting to see that really come to life right now.
Hey, we have veterans who, of course, have lost limbs, and how would they find out or get information, or could they reach out to y'all to get contact on those hemp prosthetics?
Yeah, this is Human Plant Solutions out in Nebraska.
Right on. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, people are looking for, natural solutions, and unfortunately, our service members are leading the edge, unfortunately, due to loss of limbs due to recent warfare. And yeah, that is something that, wow, thank you for making us aware of that, even in those productions, because those are a whole other industry unto themselves, the medical prosthetics. But that even that is environmentally sound, and that y'all are at least in there, championing it, is warms the cockles of my heart. So next up would be Council Member Wade Laughter.
Yeah, thank you, Chen. And I must say, Barbara and Summer, you are hugely inspiring to me. And at least partially because I feel like you're fighting a fight that you're probably not going to win in your lifetime, but you're fighting for it anyway. And I have so much respect for that kind of determination. I share that kind of determination with you. And specifically, I'm really struck by in the hemp industry today, most folks who work with the plant in the hemp industry are harvesting cannabinoids, which was never the intention of the Farm Bill. You folks are doing the work that was the intention of the Farm Bill. But a loophole was left that, shall we say, certain actors are taking advantage of. And I realize I'm way off base here on the question I was going to ask you, but I feel like it plays a part because our culture is increasingly accepting cannabis. And I think a lot of that is because of hemp. And that's why our culture is increasingly accepting cannabis, because they're seeing their uncle or their mother or their sister responding well to a preparation that's, is it hemp? Is it cannabis? Who knows? It's green. So anyway, my question to you is, what part do you think mainstream media exposure has played in the resurgence of hemp? And specifically, Summer, how did your collaborations with Pimp My Ride and The Tonight Show with Jay Leno help bring sustainable hemp textiles into public awareness? And again, thank you for your determination and your bravery. Bless you.
Thank you so much, Wade. Thank you. It's all of us together in this, or else we wouldn't be getting anywhere. I will say, to touch on one of the things you just said, though, never in a million years do I think any of us, even Etienne in California, like all of us that were part of just the cannabis whole scene, want to see everything move forward. This wasn't just all about hemp, but we want to see all of it move forward and everybody embrace cannabis in all its forms. But we never thought in a million years in Colorado that it would be Amendment 64 as a medical marijuana initiative that just happened to write industrial hemp in the back end and nobody even knew, like that was also going to push it forward. And it was kind of one of those like, wait for us. And at that point, people were going, well, we thought that you guys had already legalized. We've seen all these great hemp products and everywhere from the body shop and airports to my local Whole Foods, or even Dr. Bronner soap in your local King Supers. Like, it was everywhere. So people didn't realize that we're still fighting for where we need to be, on these products today. And of course, the mainstream opportunities that have come up, or that I've gone and, been incessant on, really getting their attention, has really pushed it forward, because there's a lot of people that never noticed those products might have been right in front of their face, and they never even realized, like, oh, that's a hemp lotion, or that's a hemp chapstick, and why that hat or chapstick was so important, and so the mainstream was kind of one of those opportunities where it was like, when we did that Pimp My Ride, it was an Earth Day special that brought in Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was the governor of California at that time. And Arnold, being a foreigner, you would think would have a little bit more understanding about industrial hemp. And, even on the episode, he's feeling the interior saying, oh, this is really nice fabric. And they said, yeah, it's hemp fabric. And he pulled his hand away really fast and said, oh, no, we have a bad enough problem with this in California as it is. Now people are going to think they can smoke their car. And it was like, oh man, no, he didn't just go there. And then he goes on to say, I just outlawed hemp in California. And it was funny because we had a call from the Capitol 2 days later saying, can you guys make any announcement or put something on your website? Because we've had so many calls from that Pimp My Ride from upset Californians thinking that Arnold had just banned their favorite lotion from the store. Like nobody got it, and then he didn't even say it properly when he said, I just banned hemp. Like, no, you had just vetoed an initiative that nobody even really got to know about. You didn't ban hemp in California, dude. So it was really strange to kind of see the disruption that a lot of mainstream would result in. But of course, to be able to show the top of the top with, Pimp My Ride and Miss America, we've done, Miss America having hemp wedding gowns on the runway, and Project Runway, and different chefs shows, and it just continues to bring the topic up and keep people excited about what they're going to see next.
Right on. Oh, very proud, because I mean it's yeah, I had people contacting me and like I know those people. They're great. All right, next up will be Marilyn Mathry, Councilmember Mathry.
Boy, this conversation is it is very just captivating. I'm so excited. As a nurse, when I got into cannabis for medical cannabis, it's always been the whole plant, because we think of the whole planet and the environment and how we have to be good. This thing about the prosthetics just it was like, oh wow, yeah, everything is so cool. I've been thinking, hospitals need to be of hempcrete just for the mold resistance and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, this question's for Barbara. You developed the SBP, the Sustainable Biodegradable Products trademark rating system. How has it impacted eco-friendly textile certification, and why was this standardization so crucial?
At the very moment I launched this, I got approached by the USDA Bio Preferred program. Let's say my standard would have been disruptive to theirs. So at that time, I had to comply with the boys in the big suits. But there's a lot of certifications. I'm not a member of any of them. I'm the product developer, so I know everything that goes into the product.
And it's not covering one piece of the puzzle.
And it's not covering one piece. Say, if it says SBP, that product. Yeah, I came up with this 20 years ago. So I'd probably clarify it more. It was my way of saying, I can't support the hundreds of certifications right now. Hundreds.
And it costs like
And I have to, yeah, 30,000, whatever. But I have to apologize because I go off on this because I really believe and feel my passion is healthcare, really. The environments you're working in, the spreading of the biohazards. I'm very familiar. So the SBP, I really need a lot of intern students to help me to make this more clear to people. I can't do everything. And I don't get as much cooperation as I'd like to see. I've used
Or it's the big colleges that you don't want to give this kind of information to because they can bury it. Like we get so many colleges, and I mean, we've seen it happen to some of the students we've worked with. There's a student that's been mentoring under Mom for 15 years that's brilliant, and his entire master thesis was taken and buried 15 years ago. And it's delayed any progress in that area because he was the only one to prove it in the labs and show that it met all the criterias. So it's really kind of crazy to think. But with the SPP, I explain to people, everybody always wants to know, is it organic? Is it organic? Is it certified organic? And I say this is better than certified because this is a full product transparency. It's a life cycle from the plant and every single step of the process, all the way back to going to our earth when we're done with it and having little to no impact when we're ready to dispose. So everything's healthy. And, like Mom said, these certifications are so costly. And then 9 out of 10 times, there isn't any real substance and requirements. There's no true textile experts on their boards. They're not even sending their own inspectors to these countries anymore. They're hiring third-party inspectors at site. And, what was it, like 10 years ago, we needed to expand our dyeing. We needed to do more dyeing. And so Mom looked up a very well-known textile or certification to see who was on their list for dyers. Found one not too far away, and we went, great, yeah, we got one that's not too far away. She goes to check them out, and I'll never forget you calling me and saying, this place wouldn't be certified on the moon. And she called one of the inspectors over there and said, what is going on? How is this place even on the list? And she goes, oh, well, I'm sorry to tell you, I haven't worked for them for years. They fired all of us. They're not sending their own inspectors anymore. They're hiring these third parties. So you can't trust it, and it's just it's a crazy thing.
It has to become in our political environment right now, we're obviously seeing how are things, is this for real? And Etienne, you asked a question on products. If it popped up, I now see where the pop-up.
He's telling the next person to be ready.
Oh. I don't know how this computer thing works. I'm more of
it's okay.
lift up the hood and get
I know
a tool.
that's what we're doing. That's just behind the scenes chat because I'm just lining everything up for the next one. So I will then roll into the next question.
Can I just add one quick thing about that? Because as a kid growing up in this, remember you guys in the 90s, how it was all about like natural products, natural, eco, right? And then we went into the 2000s and it was like, oh, but is it organic? And then the Organic Trade Association started up and they were like, you can't say it's organic unless it's been certified and you're paying us. And then we started seeing by 2015, people talking sustainability. And I was like, yes, like it's just getting further and further. Next is going to be transparency and biodegradability and like all these things. And now here we are shifting from sustainability into what they're now calling bio-based materials. And so like they're considering GMO corn stalk waste being turned into polyester, a bio-based material.
No.
And that's total bull.
No.
So the greenwashing that goes on, and the bigger that conscious consumerism gets, and the bigger our market gets with all these different companies and products, the more greenwashing and the further we're seeing them get away from what the true intention was.
Yeah, it's gonna come back. I don't remember what year it was. It was 2 decades ago. We sponsored at FIT the first sustainability conference to introduce a curriculum to the students.
Yeah.
But it will only be adapted into a curriculum if the endowments allow it to be.
Yeah, so that's where the greenwashings come in again. All these endowments manipulated. So the curriculum that we fought for has been totally manipulated over the years.
And in Texas, when I'm not going to say specifics, but I was asked to go speak during this resurgence we've had, but I was told I'd be scripted.
No, that does not surprise me for some reason.
Yes. So I didn't go. When most people, well, people that went and talked, we won't say names. I was, if Harvard asked me to go, and most people would go, oh, I spoke at Harvard. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't. Because I can't compromise this plant, along with many others that have been ancient fibers, future fabrics. And this office is full of them.
And you ladies lead it, and we cannot thank you enough for, every aspect of what you're doing and why, because you helped educate us on there is a forethought in every aspect of what you do, and you've helped us understand also why it's important, and you will continue to. So thank you. Next up will be Council Member Tony Landry with our next question.
Yes, thank you. I second ATN's comments. It's wonderful that you're so concerned with the environment. Both of you have worked with major global brands. What innovations and environmental standards helped attract companies like Ralph Lauren, Adidas, and Nike to the hemp textile market?
So I think in the early days, like with Adidas and Nike and stuff, it was more just kind of doing something different and out of the box. I mean, they knew there was a small market for it, but they knew they could play on it and just have something much different than anybody had seen. And it worked well for what they wanted to do.
Patagonia, places like Patagonia. I worked with Hemp Vortex in China. Okay.
But that's a brand that like focuses on
they were able to get, we had Patagonia, we had Gramici, we had big outdoor lines. A lot of people were using hemp, but it goes back to the fact there wasn't enough supply, even out of China. Yeah. There wasn't enough supply.
And so they might do really well at a trade show. Good example, one of my first really big accounts when I was a teenager, this guy, it was his first trade show, 3-day trade show at Magic, and he wrote $800,000 in orders on his first trade show. And he was a brand new brand. Nobody had ever seen him before. And that's so unique because trade shows, the buyers show up, they already have their budget planned. They know exactly who they're buying from. If they have any budget for a new brand, they want to see it's somebody that's been there and they know they're going to deliver. So, we started seeing some of these innovative brands coming into the show scene. And I was pushing a lot of these guys. When I was a teenager, I said, streetwear was like a big thing. All of a sudden, it was never really acknowledged before. And I went, oh my God, streetwear is going to be the hottest section to have hemp clothes. Well, when you think about it, streetwear is selling to kids who don't have money. So like who can afford, hemp stuff? So it was like, oh, thank God we've got these fabrics. When mom develops a new fabric, or I come to her and I say, here's the next thing we need, an innovation for the marketplace. We also think about not only is this going to fill the gap, but this one material can lend itself to so many things. So like one canvas is going to 100 different furniture companies, is going to coats and jackets, is going to backpacks and wallets, is going to shoes, is going to, so it's really a matter of having a development that can reach multiple industries, multiple products. And, you know, the big brands really help to kind of put it front and center. When you walk in a big mall and you see that the Hemp Adidas is in the front window display and not back on a wall, you know, that's the kind of things that are really kind of getting everybody's attention. And they all go, oh, that's the hottest new thing. We have to support that. So, you know, it's been this really unique balance between, you know, small brands that may, like, I don't know, Etienne, if you ever been out to Hawaii, there's this gal, Abby, with Sativa Hempwear. They were like one of the very first hemp shops. The hemp shop ended up having a fire in the 90s, burning down. And she said, you know what, I'm going to just, and she made most of the stuff they were selling in the shop. And she goes, I'm just going to do the Sunday markets. And I'm going to sell, I'm going to make as much as I can every week. And then come Sunday, and she's still in the same spot every Sunday at this market for 35 years, you know, and she just called me the other day and she goes, I'm at the market and this person showed up that knows you. We wanted to call you on WhatsApp and video you, you know, and it's like that designer is this stay-at-home mom. You know, our kids are out of the house now, but she's a stay-at-home mom, but she's established this wonderful position in a place that gets all this tourism, and she's gotten to people all over the world, and they buy one of her impeccable quality products, and it ignites them to go and look for more hemp. And so our biggest concern right now that I really want to touch on before we end tonight is, you know, we never thought that we would ever have to say that you have to question anything hemp. Hemp and cannabis, we always want to tell people it's the best of the best. It's always going to do you right. It's always going to perform. It's always going to make you feel better. And unfortunately, in the fabric industry, we're now at this tipping point where that's not the case. And there's polyester hemp, there's cottonized hemp, there's viscose hemp, and there's no label laws for them to have to list it as such. And so now we're getting calls from people going, I bought this thing on Amazon. It's nothing like what I've worn from you guys. What is this crap? And we're going, well, we don't know. What do you got? You know, and they're sending it to us. And then mom will send it to the lab. Okay. And that's why she mentioned earlier, and she sends it to the lab, and the lab comes back and says, no plant matter detected. It's so toxic, they can't even tell you what it's derived from. And, you know, we're starting to see some of this stuff revealed. The Federal Trade Commission is in the largest lawsuit in U.S. hemp history right now against big box stores for bamboozling consumers. So all this bamboo fabric that everybody thought was the next big natural healthy thing, they're all buying sheets from Target and stuff. You know, it is the furthest thing from natural. There's nothing left natural about it once it's been turned into a fabric.
And the frustration, because I knew this
was coming.
The very first garment that someone said, this is bamboo. Bamboo. I was actually in China on that project for it to be a natural process. And some big conglomerate came in and said, look, we can chemically process it, call it bamboo, not anticipating someone would spend $3,000 or $4,000 to have it tested and broken down. And I had to do that.
Yeah.
And we'll, you know, America is ready. It's now. And we have to get, you know, the objective, the road to the objective paved, and the plant planted. We think from a good example, and the Chinese taught me this. They always said, why do you say I'm going to the store? Nobody knows what you're talking about. You must say the store is where I'm going.
Mm.
And the thinking process, it really makes a big difference.
And I think COVID too, we saw a huge increase in consciousness during COVID. When COVID hit and the shutdown happened, we got a letter from our governor overnight saying we were an essential business and could be on the road. And we sold out in the first 2 weeks, we sold out of every fabric you could make a cloth baby diaper out of because people couldn't find diapers in the stores.
Yeah.
And that was like this huge light bulb for so many new parents, not only realizing what they had been using, but then everything else they're going to put on their babies and their pets, and now thinking about themselves. And so it was like, any chance that you can get that initial connection to ignite, the trickle effect happens because people, once you see it, you can't look at anything without seeing and analyzing and wanting to know that you're making the right educated conscious choices for our health. And COVID really was so interesting to see so many people go, oh my gosh, look at all this, the junk we're surrounded by and all these things that are making us sick. It's not just this virus or bacteria that we're talking about anymore.
But healthcare is the Maryland. That's why the sleeves on your jackets went from long sleeve to short sleeve on your lab coats, on your scrubs.
So much crazy stuff in the back. There's so many areas.
Are you connecting what I'm saying? You used to have long sleeves, and then the sleeves got shorter because the fabrics that are currently in healthcare, the biohazards will live on the surface.
And to help with it transferring. There's so many different areas. I mean, it's crazy. There's so many different areas and industries.
One second. So now what they're doing is embedding silver particles and saying that's going to make it antibacterial. They're only perpetuating the harmful, hellacious processes that when those companies, children, hopefully get older, they're going to make the change. They'll start it because these kids are hip. The 14-year-olds, the 15-year-olds.
They get it. They understand. They've lived through the pandemic to see and saw the parents' reactions, etc. So, wow, that's very profound. Thank you, ladies. We'll go up next. Will be Council Member Leslie Fries. Council Member.
Yeah, Summer, this one's for you. So at 18, you said that you decided to give a 10-year go. Did you ever think at that time that you'd be the vice president of the Hemp Industries Association and become one of the youngest recipients of their Lifetime Achievement Award? What impact did your leadership have on the industry, and what key changes did you push for?
That's kind of a hard one because in a way it's like yes and no. I was the kid that, dreamed of being able to sit up there with my peers, and I was always the one, as I watched a lot of my peers get burnt out or put everything they had into things or move around in their position. I was always the cheerleader, like, no, get your energy back up, and you can't do, and they're looking at me like, oh gosh, Summer, it's her turn. And I said, no, we're not done with you guys yet. We still need you, and so I had some really incredible peers in the Hemp Industry Association. Steve Levine at the time was the president, and he was just such a wonderful guy. He started the, what was it, Santa Monica Hemp Fest that went on forever in California. It was like the oldest hemp fest in California. And, he did, God rest his soul. I know, one of the most special people in my life. And so he really uplifted me into that position. You know, he was like, look, you've been putting in the work. I mean, there were times that I got recognition where I was going, wait, no, it should be going to this person that's older than me and that's been doing all this. And, you know, they would say, no, you earned it. You earned it. You've done your part. And but then, you know, when you're dealing with groups and organizations, it's hard when at that point, you know, it was so important to have the HIA because it was like the only place that everybody could come together once a year and share what they're doing and support each other, but just feel that sense of community and energy to leave and go be that much more successful for the next year. And so I was really good at that. It came as a big surprise. You know, I would have probably eventually gone from VP to president, but I had a lot of resistance for things that I wanted to bring and do and change. And at that time, it was only me and one other young person on the board. And so, you know, our board was all very busy with their own companies and their own programs going on. And so when him and I would come up with these ideas, they were like, oh God, these kids are like going to make so much work for us, you know? And we're like, no, we'll do it. We don't need you guys. We're good, you know? And it got to the point where Steve actually said to me, stop asking and just do it. You know, he goes, you guys don't have to always follow protocol. Because, you know, when I was growing up, like we learned from the best and there was a system and a protocol in place and it behooved everyone, you know, and nowadays you don't see a lot of that. And that's why you don't see supply chains where everyone's successful in some way or another, you know, whether it's small scale, medium or large, everyone at least kind of was successful in their position. And now it's like you either make it or you don't kind of thing, because people don't follow those old school protocols. And so, you know, when we had the very first HIA conference in Colorado, it was the year of legalization here. So it was what, 2014 or I don't remember. I should know these things, but it's been so many years now, you guys. Mom's saying 20 years, and I'm like, try 25 since you started the SPP. But you know, it's crazy to think it's 2025 now. But when HIA came and did their first conference here, is when they gave me my first Lifetime Achievement Award. And Mom's gotten one every decade, so she's got like 4 on the wall, you know. She got another one that night too, but they included me to receive one. And that was my first one. And it was interesting. I mean, at that point with the legalization, we had some really interesting people in the audience that were right in my face when I received that award. And I took all advantage of that opportunity and saying some things to everybody. So, you know, I don't just go up and receive an award and thank you. We have to continue to keep pushing what the true agenda is and honoring nature in the way it intended so that we all receive the benefits that cannabis really provides to all of us. Because the second it is destroyed and manipulated is as soon as we stop seeing all it can really do for all of us.
And this is a mantra that I say in cannabis. You, number one, have to have passion. Number 2 is principles. Number 3, prosperity will come, but it's not going to come without the passion and the principles. Because we're 25 years now.
In this company, yeah.
This company is probably the old one.
This is the 7th hemp company that Mom has developed or been involved with. You know, this is the 7th company in almost 40 years now.
Yeah.
So, which makes it hard because, like, you know, there's some people out there that are like, we're the oldest and we're the biggest. And I'm like, what? Like,
but it's interesting because it's my daughter. She has the passion. She has the principles. And when she says 7 companies, they were little, and I had partners and I had people I worked with. This has been she and I, and we've made it 25 years.
And we do it full time all the time, and that's it. There's no there's nothing else. Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's being a business owner. You know, it's people think
Yeah.
it's a 9 to 5 thing, and what you find as a business owner, it's a 24/7 thing, unfortunately, and there is no off times because that problem arrives to you while you're sitting on the toilet.
Right. Right.
Yes. Oh God. And
Right?
WhatsApp in the middle of the night. The
Right.
WhatsApps.
Yeah.
Oh God. And
So,
WeChat.
and tell mom she doesn't have to reply to everybody immediately. They can wait.
Right? Well, that's makes your mom who she is because she always felt the urgent need, and that's her passion, and that's
Yeah.
what rubbed off on all of us is, how she cared. So of course it makes sense that, her passion would absolutely rub off on you. And of course, we were fortunate to be where we were to have that catalyst to reinforce those beliefs. Because remember, we had all kinds of books telling us what was possible, but it was Barbara showing us and clothing us and making it really beyond words. It was a reality, and I can't thank y'all enough. So for what y'all continue to do and why you do it. And you've shared many of that with us, and we appreciate that. So next up will be Council Member Michael Crowitz. Council Member.
Thank you, Jim. So, seeing where we are, we've come so far in the last 20, 30 years, but yet, in a sort of a big picture way, we're not that far ahead of where we were 100 years ago, in some ways, right? But where do you see, looking ahead, how do you see the future of hemp textiles in the U.S., and what steps must be taken to ensure the continued growth, sustainable growth in fashion and manufacturing?
Well, I'd like to say right now we've got some good things, not me, Summer particularly, but the industry in the US. We've got some great products coming out. Hemp texture, we've got hemp wood floor. These guys made a product that will be embraced at a very high level. I can see it. If you don't know who they are, look them up because they're great products. But we have to gain the confidence of the farmers again. The farmers lost their confidence because they were growing for medical and CBD.
Yeah.
And we lost the fruit orchards in Western Colorado, horse pastures, but I'd like to be where I belong, which is, I keep saying I want to retire, but I want to educate and just show what we have to do to create raw materials that get purchased by industries that are already identified.
Yeah.
They're already here.
So what's important for people to understand with textiles is with textiles, there's non-wovens and there's wovens. So in order for the US to ever have hemp textiles, fabrics, there has to be non-wovens that have been done and done right to ever lead us into wovens. And then, the US doesn't have any long fiber systems. Nobody's talking about degumming. Everybody's only talking about decorticating. And it's like, okay, well, that's the first step of the process. And that's easy if you know what you're doing to have the good material. But then it has to have a natural degumming to clean that fiber from all the plant lignin and celluloses and be able to even be millable to go to combing, carding, spinning. And then we have no long fiber systems. So when she said earlier, It's going to be $300-400 million to build out 4 state-of-the-art natural fiber facilities to take on and do what we're able to do overseas. That isn't a whole lot in the grand picture of like being able to produce here and service multiple industries and needs and even get us back on the global exchange. But we need a whole hell of a lot of the right kind of hemp to make that happen,
And when we heard the word cottonized hemp fiber, that was you heard it, right? Everybody heard it. Basically, what happened, it looked like cotton, it felt like cotton, but it wasn't in a standard that could utilize the systems we had in America, which is cotton systems. So when you would see blends that were, I don't want to go way off on this, but we can do this. I've got all the evidence right here.
She's completed a proof of concept for the US that is superior to every other country she's developed in.
And it's mind-blowing, and it considers water conservation, reducing the need for herbicides. You don't even have to, water is precious. It's like gold. Now, you can reduce your water consumption growing hemp if they just follow this method. Follow it. And then you're going to have standards in the stock. I don't think it matters what variety seed. I don't know enough about when they say cultivars. When I first heard that, I thought they were talking about dinosaurs. Yeah, I did, because sunflowers, of course, would be a good analogy. But if you plant them a specific way, I have a hunch we're going to get a standard in the diameter, then of a hemp stalk, and then we're going to have numbers that are actually close to accurate on the yields and the application of those raw materials without needing $300 million infrastructure investment. Because
it's interesting because like people keep asking us, when are you guys going to start making your stuff here? Or we get a bunch of calls from cannabinoid growers, and they say, when are you guys going to start buying our stocks and making socks? And they don't understand the difference. But it's interesting because like basically what Mom's saying is we'd like to see hemp be able to step in and play an even bigger role in this country. And there's areas that it's needed more desperately that has higher value for the farmer, the processor, and the products than any fabric or hemp building material could ever imagine. And that proof of concept she's completed. And it's like she says she wants to retire, but at the same time, there's always been this sense of urgency with you to make sure that Mother Earth's going to survive.
I just want to tell a young person or a marijuana grower would be great to say, and I'm going to say this publicly, the shrub of marijuana or CBD is wood and bark. It's not fiber. And the same as what's in industrial hemp. So on those shrubs, how about horizontal chipping it, using a little pine tar, wrapping it and selling it at $8 a log, like Duraflame logs.
There's so many things that's like endless, and the values
Right?
and
Yep.
are through the roof.
And the hemp herd, how I discovered it would work for that was I was building a decorticator out in a junkyard, and we were using a burn barrel and ran out of wood to burn. So I took a little bit of Coca-Cola, it was full of sugar, and took the scraps, and we literally let it dry in the sun, and it burned hot. It burned with very low smoke, and it outlasted the poplar that we were burning.
And we're talking about the three most toxic industries on the planet, you guys. We've got building materials, plastics, and textiles. And where do we have the most impact? Where can we make the most difference? And that's where hemp can come right in. And when you have so many people, like I've never understood why we're called the alternative when we're the solution. Stop calling it the alternative. We are the solution, and it can be scaled within a growing season or 2 or 3. So when people say, oh, but there's not enough out there, there's nothing out there. Yes, there is indeed. And we can grow what we need, and it can be scaled within a few growing seasons. So it's an exciting future for the US if people come together to get the job done.
Well, there's raw materials. I'm a product developer. So not just with textiles and fiber, I can look at an agricultural waste product and apply it into another product. A good example was the 3M sponge that was called the Greener Cleaner. It had a 50% in the abrasive side of the sponge was a waste product from beverage processing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's so many resources. You just have to be
that's sitting there as waste and considered a biohazard because these factories don't want to pay to dispose of it, and they end up burning this stuff. When she got called into Mexico to deal with that, she called and she goes, I hit the mother load of fiber, and it had been nothing but a headache for these factories. Yeah. And it turned into this amazing product, and almost every big box now.
Same thing with agave honey, and I'll close with that. I'm the one that discovered it was a food product 20 years ago when they considered it a biohazard. Yeah. So it's the vision to be able to see it. And I couldn't cook a meal if my life depended on it.
Yeah.
But I sure can look at a raw material and see what we need to do to utilize it to make other products. And I'm looking at hemp going, oh, there's so many
that aren't going to require the insane foundation like
an investment. And honestly, the fires in California, that was divine intervention in a very heartbreaking way. But let's start growing hemp. Let's start utilizing it in interiors and structural. And as far as interiors go, there's going to be all kinds of natural fiber textiles, and the food from hemp.
And it's important that we continue to support the countries that have developed the systems properly, not always be trying to reinvent or take over. It's like, well, this gives the US the opportunity to take over 2 of the other biggest nasty toxic industries with a lot less infrastructure needed. So, it's exciting to see everybody's been really listening. We've been keynotes at all the hemp conventions and events, for the last 12 plus years or whatever. And we literally felt like broken records saying the same thing over and over. We've got to see composite decortification and composite done right and clean and properly so that this can lead down the line in the right way. And we're starting to see a couple of those facilities, so it's really exciting.
Ladies, Summer, we got to get you out. Councilmember Freeze and I were actually at the USDA's Cannabis Germplasm
I saw
Institute
that.
in Geneva, New York, and they will have another one in September. And I think for sure you should join us and Rob Clark and others out in Geneva, New York, because they could benefit from both of you ladies if you're able to, Barbara, as well. But for sure, Summer, they need your guidance and understanding because they, as Barbara said earlier, they're reinventing the wheel, especially with decorticators and other things that we saw. I mean, the pictures I could show you were an embarrassment for decorticating standards. And then if you saw the harvesters that we saw, you would be appalled by what the US standards are. And I understand that they think they're trying to do the right thing, but they had a full decorticator that fits on the back of an 18 wheeler that we know could fit into a 4x8 area. And the way that the harvest is, etc., they're just, it's the boys with toys. They don't know what they're doing. As you said, Barbara, they're trying to reinvent the wheel again. And they need to see what they're, how to do things right. And they want to learn from us and how to do things right. So we've engaged them, and I think they could benefit from your expertise to save them the time that they're going to waste and a lot of money that they're going to waste doing stupid things that they don't need to be doing, that intelligent women like yourself already well past and can help guide them past it, because there's students at Cornell that are running it and they mean well, but they just don't know what they're doing in some results, and they need an understanding. Because as I've told people back in the day, I looked at retooling actual sugarcane factories in Louisiana into hemp mills, because then those mills would be central to the fields that they were potentially be growing in, which is a reality that has to happen. I mean, it's great that Texas opened up a processing facility, but where's the hemp to process those facilities? They all have to be shipped in from all over. And as Councilmember Freeze will tell you, getting your hemp on a truck and moving it across state lines is a challenge I know that y'all have dealt with, but she's been a raw producer herself. So we've seen these realities that come with.
Oh, sorry.
No,
It
go ahead,
shouldn't
Barb.
be. Can I tell them about the code?
Well,
Oh, yeah. You're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe this. In World War II, there was a shipping code specific. Write this down. Hemp, jute, or oakum in bales, boxes, or drums. They forgot to take it off the books. We've been using that code, and it's class 60, item number
14960 sub-0. I mean, these are all little things we can teach these people.
You can move it anywhere you want.
You're federally okay.
And it's the lowest freight cost you could ever move the stuff under.
Oh my God, you ladies are absolutely. I could look at that. Leslie's like, oh my God, if I had only known. But we're here now. We're knowledgeable. So wow, ladies, I cannot thank you enough. We need to have you on again. You're just such a wealth of knowledge. For
maybe next time I can show off a bunch of cool hemp stuff so everybody knows what's out there and what's going on.
Let's do that. Let's do a show and tell episode where you can show us what it is, the product, show us some of the car stuff, show us some of that stuff. Yeah, we'd absolutely love to have you guys back for another show.
And talk about the healthcare facilities, the various tests
that's like a whole show in itself.
For just the uniforms that are being worn in healthcare. There's so much.
Well, we'll get into those in time, but I want to thank you both for taking the time. We went over 2 hours. Yeah, you educated us and why what we wear matters, as well as, this wonderful hemp products that are out there and that y'all are doing is, it still has its potential. It's just, unfortunately got lost along the way. None of us envisioned hemp becoming what it's become in the CBD world. And
Right.
unfortunately, we have to wrestle it out of those hands to, get hemp back where it needs to be. And I cannot thank you ladies for literally leading the opportunities and reshaping the industry, because you have taken it as beyond a responsibility. You have led by example. So I want to thank Councilmember Wade Laughter, Tony Landry, Mary Lynn Mathry, Michael Crowitz, Leslie Fries, of course, Summer and Barbara, and myself, Etienne Fontan. This has been the V.A.C's Roundtable number 85. Barbara Filippone and Summer Star Haeske from Environmental Textiles. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a great rest of your night.
Good night.
Thank you for having us, everyone. Hemp, hemp.
The Veterans Action Council is a PACE Radio Network content provider. You're listening to the PACE Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partners 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.